Hi, today I am going to start a little mini series where I just address some very common arguments that I encounter online from Catholics and Orthodox that are generally pretty bad. They're gonna just be like 5 to 10 minute videos, fairly short. And the first one I'm going to start with is going to be pertaining to the perspicuity of Scripture. The argument in question is generally about the vast number of Protestant denominations they usually cite. 40,000 denominations, which is a flawed statistic, but either way, they'll point to different interpretations of the Bible, and then they'll say, if the Bible is so clear, then why are there so many different interpretations? That's the general argument. And so, how this kind of works out, let's just generalize the statement. So, the argument is X corpus of writings has a large degree of different interpretations. Therefore, X corpus of writings is unclear. That's the general argument. But this really does prove way too much, because if we're being consistent and not arbitrary, we're not just applying it to Protestants and Protestants only, then it kind of renders any authority not clear. Like, just take the Church Fathers for an example. First of all, there's a lot more writings of the Church Fathers, this is true, but in principle, it's similar. It's a corpus of writings. The Bible is written by dozens of authors over the course of 1,500 years, approximately. The Church Fathers, depending on how you count it, it's like 500, maybe 700 years, depending on where you cut off the patristic period, with maybe 60 to 100 authors in that time period. I'm not 100% sure. The difference is simply time period and the amount of writings, not really in any principal distinction. But anyways, Protestants and Catholics and Orthodox and even secular scholars will read that history pretty differently, and even individual authors, like, let's just take Augustine as an example. Now, did he support the papacy? I mean, well, first of all, some Catholics would actually argue he didn't. There's a historian, maybe, Klaus Schatz. He's a German historian who was a Catholic. I might be getting this guy mixed up, but I don't think he agrees that Augustine supports a type of papal supremacy that modern Roman Catholicism does. But then other, radical traditionalist Catholics are going to read the papacy all the way back to the time of Peter as the same, and say that was the patristic consensus. And then Protestants are going to read that differently. Atheist scholars are going to read that differently. Orthodox scholars are going to read Augustine differently on this. So, if there's differing interpretations on how Augustine viewed the papacy, then clearly Augustine must not be clear on the papacy. Now, either he is clear or he isn't clear. But now, that's the general logic. Ex corpus of writings of Augustine, differing interpretations. Augustine must be unclear. Ex corpus of writing must be unclear. So that's patristics, that's church tradition, that's unclear. So if Scripture is unclear for this, then church tradition must also be unclear for this, because there's differing interpretations of church tradition. People are looking at the same church fathers' writings, the same councils, the same canons, and they do come to different conclusions. So if Scripture is unclear for having multiple differing interpretations, multiple groups interpreting it differently, then, well, church tradition must be unclear, because people read the same church history and come to different conclusions. So, either we don't have a single clear authority, or maybe the fact that certain texts have different groups that interpret it differently, the simple fact that that happens does not, in principle, negate the clarity of that corpus of writings. Alright, thank you for listening.